Thank you for attending today's live product demonstration titled Making the Connection of DevOps Release Management with Value Delivery. My name is Alexandra Garrett. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at CloudNet version 1, and I'm the moderator of today's live product demo. In this session, you will learn how version 1, an Agile ALM platform for scaling Agile in the enterprise, can be integrated with Continuum, a release management platform that empowers and enables organizations to map, visualize, measure, and optimize the flow of value from concept to cash. These two products together encompass our value stream solution called VF. For questions during the demonstration, please type them into the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. We will try to answer questions as they are asked, and we'll also collect them to be answered at the end of the demo. One of our fantastic solution architects, Mark Davian, is here with us today to lead the demonstration and answer any questions you may have. I will now turn the discussion over to Mark, and we will get started with the live product demo. Welcome, Mark.
Great, thank you, Allie, and thanks everybody for joining. We have a real big crowd here today, so we're really excited to be able to talk about how we can make this connection between DevOps, release management, and show that back through the value delivery cycle. So we'll be walking through just a couple of slides here, and then we're going to jump into the live demo. When we talk about really making that connection and what it means, we really look at two sides of our V diagram here. Really on the left-hand side, it's where we can plan out all of that work. We'll be talking a little bit about how we can break that work down from the portfolio through the program and then down to the team levels here. If we do have other solutions we need to integrate in with, things like Jira, we can also integrate in with those as well directly. So, but by making that connection though to the right-hand side, what we're really looking at is our ability to then start to see that work come across in terms of the commits and the changes that the teams are actually making with that software. When those software changes are made, we make that connection between what we call this left side, the strategy side of the planning, as well as to the right side, the value delivery side. So that's what we'll be walking through in this demonstration today. What that connection allows us to then do is to really plan out the value stream of the work as it moves from the planning and the execution side all the way over to the delivery side. So we'll show you how we can use our progressions and our pipelines on the delivery side to really be able to bring together some of the best of breed solutions and tools that are out there, orchestrate all that for us. And what that will give us is the delivery metrics that we'll then be able to use to, one, just track how we're doing in flight, as well as give that information back over to the portfolio and to the program levels. So we'll connect the delivery side back over to the portfolio and really give us the visibility and the data that we need to make sure that, one, the deliveries are on track and that we can help them if they need help, but also to bring in important information back like defects or approvals or other things that we can see then on the left side of this. So this is what we will be walking through today as part of the demonstration. We're going to go through a couple of different scenarios first off and use a couple of personas. So I'm going to start here on the left-hand side as a portfolio director or a portfolio owner. Sometimes this could be a C-level suite person that's going to be looking at the strategy and the portfolios from the highest levels. The nice thing about this is that no matter what team solution you're using, whether it's version 1 or another one, all of this can roll up to the strategy level. So we can do cross-team planning and even cross-solution planning if we need to go ahead and do that. So let's jump into the strategy section first. And where I'm going to start is at that highest level where we're looking at a big company goal. Oftentimes that's going to be called a strategic theme. So in this case, I've got my innovation strategic theme. We're looking at one of the version 1 scorecards here. And this is showing us all of that work that is being done in terms of delivering different portfolio items. In this case, these epics that the teams are working on at various different levels throughout the organization and perhaps even across other teams as well. All of that work is actually rolling up, and we can see that in terms of total value. So if we want to look at this total value score right here, 430, that's telling us how many value points we're actually delivering or we're planning on delivering out to our end customer. These value points are rolling up from these individual portfolio items that we see here on the bottom, and that gives us the ability for us to see across our entire enterprise the value that we're planning on delivering out to our end customer. So we've already started to show the value that we're going to be delivering and how we're rolling all of that up from the epic levels. We can also see some other key metrics here, things like unestimated story points and blocked work items. These can be very important, so we want to make sure that we understand where we do have things that we can help the team with, and if we can reduce those blocked work items or help the teams to get the right resources so they can estimate their stories, that's going to make this plan even more effective. So from a scorecard view, this gives us a nice visual into that. The other thing that we can do with these big budget segments here, in this case, we're looking at it from a theme perspective, is we can actually budget for them. So we can track how well we want to do something like core improvements. In this case, 30% of our work this year should be in core improvements. But if we look at the end of the delivery cycle here, it looks like only 15% of our work is going to be core improvements. Now, what we're looking at here in terms of what's been completed is the work that the teams are doing that are rolling up from that team, and also the work that's we're delivering out to our end customers. So we can track the completed work and be able to manage that work all the way through. So these are just two views that a portfolio director or portfolio owner could see at the highest level to track things like budgeting, as well as my strategic planning and aligning that work. When we break down these strategic themes, we're going to break them down into our roadmap elements. In this case, we're going to look at a specific epic. In this case, this is my cloud call center epic. This is one card or one epic that we're planning on delivering. We have our business case directly in here. And on this specific card, the reason I wanted to show this one specifically is we're showing the business value and the weighted score and the cost of delay here as well. So this business score, these 88 points, this is what's actually rolling up to the strategic theme that we have aligned for this specific epic. So these 88 points are going to roll up into the innovation strategic theme, and we'll be able to see that work then start to be delivered as we go ahead and start to complete that work. This is one way to track business value. The other way that we can track business value if we want to is through testing. So I like to put hypotheses or tests on my specific work as well. So you can define all of the different types of value that you want to deliver, whether it be cost of reduction, technical debt, cost of delay reduction results. So there's lots of other things that we can look at here, and you can actually put these value tests on your epics. The reason I like this is because as we start to deliver on the work, we can track expected results and actual results, and we can compare them. And this doesn't have to end when we actually deliver to the end customer. We can continue to feed this actual results. If you want to, you can actually even automate this and have these actual results be calculated and then put into here via our API or from the DevOps side. We can continue to update this specific work here and show the actual results field as we start to go ahead and complete that work. So that's just a couple ways that we can go ahead and track that work here in terms of the value. We also want to see when we're going to be delivering that and be able to promise to our end customers when we will be delivering. So here I've got our roadmap view where we're showing the individual work that we just looked at, this epic here, in this case, Cloud Call Center. And this is showing the leader of this portfolio when we're planning on delivering that. So it's going to be a Q1 deliverable, and we can track all of that work. If we want to drill in further, we can go into a timeline view of this, and we can track the actual timeline of that work as well. We can expand on the epic, and we can see when we're going to be delivering these various different features that roll up into that epic. This timeline view is a great way to see exactly how the work that we've grouped here by strategic theme is going to be delivered, where the key milestones are for our work, as well as the deliverables and when we expect to deliver on the specific work here as well. So this just gives you a view from the portfolio level about what we're doing and how we're tracking all of that work. We also have analytics reports and other reporting things like feature completion and program progress that we can use throughout the cycle to make sure that we're delivering on time. Of course, this is still at a very high level. If we go down into our portfolio tree, we can see how we've broken that work down. And before we drop down into the program level here, I just want to quickly show you an example of one of those portfolio trees. So here I've got my epics that are rolling up to my top level company. When I expand on this epic, I've broken that work down as we start to decompose the epic into our features, and then we can decompose the features further all the way down into the individual stories and the defects. So these green icons are representing the user stories that we're going to link over into DevOps. The red icon here, this is a defect that the teams are actually working on as well. So we can commingle stories and defects together and have the teams work on them as we complete the specific order entry feature. If we do have dependencies, we can track those dependencies across features. We can also track those dependencies across these individual stories. A couple things just to note on here, we can use weighted shortest job first to track and manage the weighted score for each of these features and epics. And we're also rolling up the team here as well. So the team asset is going to be assigned to the work, and then that work is going to roll up here, and we'll be able to see all of the teams that are working on this specific epic. In this case, we do have Jira teams, and we also have a TeamForge team here, work that's coming over from the TeamForge team side as well. So we've got some waterfall projects that are going to be being worked on for this specific team as well. So that gives us that epic view, and it allows us to see what's going on from there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop down a layer, and we're going to put on a different hat. We're going to be that program level. For we might be an agile release train manager, or a program leader, or even a program or a product owner. And this level, this is where we're going to look at those specific features and plan them into a time box, plan them into one of our releases, or plan them into one of our program increments, so we can say this is the quarterly plan for when we're going to go ahead and deliver on that work. So as we look at that specific view, I'm actually going to change from the portfolio planning section, which is where I was here. We're going to actually go over into my program increment or my product level planning here. So when I go into my product scheduling, that'll let me drop down a level into the scheduling area for program. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the views over here. So in our solution, you can create different views which have filters and features that allow you to see just the data that you want to see. So I'm going to go into my call center agile release train view, or my program view here. What that will do is change the planning level on the upper left and also set all the filters that I want to see. So now as the program owner, I'm looking at my list of features. This is a prioritized list of the features that we might want to build into our first program increment here, which is called PI1. There's a beginning and an end date for this, so we can track all of that work. And what we would do is we would just drag the work down and put it onto that program increment, or we can multi-select and move them in mass. But if we look at this, we can actually do capacity planning for this work as well, which is going to be very important for my program to make sure that we don't go over budget. And it looks like we're already over capacity by 37 points. So we don't want to move any of these features into PI1. We'll actually move those features down here into PI2. So we'll be able to move, plan the features that we want to do at a later point. And we can do this by swag, which is our feature estimate points, or we could also do this by story points as well. So we have the ability to look at our capacity, and you can clearly see right here that we're over capacity for this specific program increment on the features as well as the stories. So we don't want to move anything more into here. We're already at or over capacity. One of the other ways that we can track value, in addition to what we looked at the epic level, is we can put a value here on our goals for our releases or our program increments. In this case, we have two different value numbers here. So what we do when we plan out this quarterly delivery is we're going to go to the business and say, okay, we have an increased revenue goal here, and if we did all of these features that we have planned on this specific program increment, how much value would that actually be to you? So the business can give us a score, and we can put a range in there, whatever number we want. It could be 1 to 10, 1 to 100, but the business is going to give us this number. When we deliver on the work, we'll go back to the business and say, okay, you said that was going to be a 10. How much work did we actually deliver? And the business will give us this score. And they said, you know what? A couple features failed, or something happened, or we didn't get the revenue that we thought we were going to get as an increase. So, what we didn't do as well as we thought here. So we can actually track these numbers by looking at business value plan and business value actual. And this is another way that we can track that value. This will allow us to manage the goals and the expectations of the business, but then we can also do something like program predictability, which will show us how predictable we are being across all of our teams, and we can see how well we've been in terms of delivering. So there's the core app team, our shining stars. The mobile app team is a pretty well improved team. Platform team, this is where we did that corrective action after the last program, and now it looks like we're on track to get back into that 80 to 100% range. So this is just one more way to track value. We tracked it at the strategic theme level. We've tracked it at the epic level. Now we're tracking it here on objectives that we're putting on our individual projects. So that's just a little bit of what the program team can do and how the program can manage that. Just one more thing that the program might be using in order to track the value and how we're actually integrating that across our teams is looking at something like our program board. So here I've got all of my work, and we're able to then visualize the dependencies that we have across that work. As we look at each individual, for my specific team, each individual feature we plan to deliver, it's clear to me that if we don't go ahead and get this specific customer calendar work done, that we're not going to be able to deliver on this specific feature that we're planning on delivering here in the November timeframe. So we know that we need to get that work done. So I need to make sure that we interface in with and talk to the website team, because if the website team doesn't get their work done, then we're not going to be able to get that delivery done on time. So it really helps us to understand the alignment as well as alignment to our key milestones that we might want to have. In addition to that, if we do have third-party teams out there, like a TeamForge team, we can actually see that work manifested in here as well, because we're syncing up that work between TeamForge as well, which is the tracking for this specific alpha team back into version 1 as well. So that's some of the work and some of the views that we can see at a program level. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the team level, and this is where the teams are going to actually start to break down that work, and then we're going to get into the DevOps side as the teams start to complete that work with version control, and then we'll look at the delivery side as well. So before we do that, let me just pause real quick here. Allie, any questions so far? Anything's come up that maybe I didn't cover as well as I needed to, or that we needed some clarification on?
Yes, we have one question that came in. So what is the difference between swag and story points?
Yeah, that's a great question. So swag really is the feature estimate or the relative ranking of size of an individual feature or an epic. In this case, we call them all portfolio items in version 1. So swag is the estimate that we'd put on a feature, say 300 swag points or feature points. And then when we start to put our stories on that feature, we expect that the story points will somehow equal or be close to equaling that 300 points. So it's just a relative way to rank the size or to judge the size of each feature. Typically, we'll use historical averages or a historical feature to say, is this feature similar to that feature that we built, 2 quarters ago? And if it is, we'll try to make the size about the same. Anything else, Allie?
Yep, one more question. So when you move an epic, will all the stories of that epic move as well?
Yes, it can. So when I move the epic at the program level here and I put it into that specific planning level, it does automatically move all the stories. If you want it to, you can just move the stories or some of the stories as well. So you can choose if you want to move all of them or just some of them. So it does. If you just drag it over, it will move all of them in.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I think we can move on.
All right, so let's drop down to the team level now. So we'll take off our program hat, we'll put in our team hat, and at this point, we're going to go ahead and look at our ability to see that work down here at the team level. So where I am right now is in a version 1 team room. This is showing me all of the prioritized stories that we have in a specific sprint, in this case, because this is a Scrum team room. And these teams are working on all these individual stories that we've planned. These are the different tasks that we've planned out for those teams. When we come in here and do our daily stand-up, I'll be Danny, and I'll say, hey, I'm Danny. Danny will click on his icon, and it'll show just the stories that Danny's working on. So Danny can then filter and move his stories along. He can give his updates. He can track his time. He can do other things as well on the specific tasks. If we want to add a new task, we can easily add a new task in here. So that's part of the Scrum ceremony of doing our daily stand-up meeting. But in addition to that, Danny's actually doing work as well. So when Danny goes back to his desk, he can go into something like TeamForge Git, and he can then start to do his work. When he starts making his changes in that Git repository, he's going to associate that specific story to that specific change that he's making in his source control system, in this case TeamForge Git, to this individual story. So what he'll do is he'll associate the story ID either through a branching strategy or a couple of different ways that he can do that back to the story. And what that does in terms of that V diagram that I just showed you earlier is that's going to allow us to map together what's going on here at the team level into my version control, because we tie that together with the work ID that we're actually using as we go ahead and the team starts to complete that work. What that essentially is going to do then is actually start a pipeline or a progression of work, and we'll be able to track that work then on the right side of this. So as we go through delivery and all the way up, we'll be able to track all of that work, and it'll allow us then to it'll allow us to see. Excuse me, it's had that little issue there. So it'll allow us to see exactly what's happening all the way up to the portfolio level. So we'll be able to track that value then that we're delivering all the way back up to scale. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So when my team does my work here in the team room, we're gonna commit that work. Well, we can do that in source control, and then when we commit that work, that's going to kick off a progression over in our DevOps side. So if we look at that here from a task perspective, let me just show you an example of what happens when we do that commit. We actually have visibility to all of those commits here. So I can go into my delivery tab on my individual story, and this is a story card that we're looking at here. But on that delivery tab, we're actually able to see then all of the commits that we've done, in this case, through either TeamForge Git or what other source control system you're using, and then where those packages are and what deliveries we've done for the specific story. So this gives me a link back into that source control system, so I can go all the way into that and see and review the code if I need to. I can also look at the packages and go into my DevOps side and check out the packages and the work that we're doing over here as well. So this is that linkage that allows us to see that value travel from the right side or the delivery over to the left side in the planning area that we're actually working on. So let's look at what those, go ahead, Allie, something you had a question.
Yep, thank you. Yes, a couple of questions came in. So after a story is completed, does the build or GitHub create release notes for that story or workload?
So yes, we do have a manifest, and we do have an audit report which can be used as the release notes for that. There's a couple different ways that we can look at it. We'll show you some examples of that when we get into Continuum. So
clarifying that the delivery tab is the release note?
No, the delivery tab is just showing me all of the commits all of the changes that we've done for a single story. I'll show you when we get into the Continuum side and we show you the audit reports and the ways that we can show what's actually being released. We will be able to show that the specific delivery metrics and what we have there.
Okay, and one more question, and then we can move on. Depending on your role, can you customize the dashboard and share it with stakeholders?
Yes, you can. So there's different levels and security that we have here in version 1. So only some people can go ahead and customize or change how this board looks. You have to be project admin or above. But if you have observer rights to this project, you can actually see this, and you'd be able to go in and look at this and view it, but not make any changes to it. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. What we're going to check out next is once we've done our changes and our commits, then those changes are going to show up on our progression board. So what we're showing here is an example of a version 1 of the DevOps progression board. Each of these little boxes here represents an individual user story or a defect that we've gone ahead and done some changes to through our source control. And now we're seeing them on our basic the phases of what we like to call the value stream of delivering that work. So in addition to the build side of the value stream, now we're looking at this from how do we move that work through the different phases of what we need to do from a testing and a delivery and an environment standpoint, so we can actually get that work out to our end customer. So these are phases that we help you set up. These are configurable, and we help you manage that work. The work gets on this specific screen here because we've done one of those commits. That's when we can track the revision of the specific work that we're doing. In this case, we're looking at a series of packages of work. So this is a web store package that is actually all of the work that we need to do the updates in different versions of the web store package that we're going to deliver. So we have 4.8, we have 5.0, and 5.1 all in stream here. We can see which user stories and defects are associated to that work. So again, I think this is one way we can go in and look at, if you wanted to know what's in a, what are all of these stories, we can actually dive into this, because that'll allow us to see not just the work that we're doing and how we're progressing through all the different phases, but we can also look at that manifest. So this is one view that we can use to say, this is everything. This is the manifest of all the stories and the defects that basically are going to get shipped out if we deliver, revision 121 of this specific package. So this is the start of what we could start to use for our specific release notes if we wanted to go ahead and look at that. We also have an audit report that would allow us to see that as well. So we can generate this audit report, which would show us all of the different phases of what we've done, all of the individual work items that we have in the different revisions and versions of that as well. So this is a good audit report that helps us not just show the changes in the work items, but it'll also show us who's done the approvals and how we move through those various different approvals as we move forward. So each of these phases is really what we've set up to say, this is how your work needs to progress through in order to get delivered to the end customer. Right, so if we go back, so we go back to our progression board one more time. I just want to highlight a few more things that we have here before we dive a little bit deeper into one of these specific pipelines. We do have some quality metrics here. So in this case, we're linking into things like code coverage. So we know how much code coverage do we have for this specific revision, how many failed tests have we done, and this will link back into, and we can go into our testing solutions as well to see exactly what's going on there. So in this case, let me see if, let me just launch that one, see if I can get to it. Yeah, I'm having an issue with that one right now. So what that one does is links us into Parasoft. So I can go to my Parasoft menu and allow me to see what's going on in terms of how many Sev1 violations do we have, how many failed tests do we have any code coverage issues as well. So this really helps us to track and manage exactly what's going on from a testing solution. We can link into any testing tools that are out there as well, and then go to the dashboards for those. Or if we wanted, we can actually just see the testing results here, or see the testing results as they get sent back over to version 1. So a lot of different options there for things that we can integrate in with. This is a great menu though, because it'll show us exactly where, for a package or all of our series of packages, where are we in terms of tracking that work. One of the important things that we show on here as well is our rogue commits. So rogue commits are commits where someone did a specific commit on this repo in this version, but we don't know which user story or defect they made that change associated to. So as a leader, I would ask you, are you comfortable making, deploying this 4.8 version into production, knowing that there's 2 changes out there, 2 commits that we have no idea what they're associated to? We can go look at those commits, we can see them in version 1, and we can then associate them to the right user story or defect. Maybe it was test code, maybe it was sample code or something else that we put in there that we didn't want in this specific package. So by knowing that, now we have the ability to stop that and prevent that from going in. It's just another way to avoid additional risk by knowing that we have rogue commits that might be going into production, and we can actually prevent those from going in right from here. Let's take a look at one of the revisions, and we'll dive in and show you an example of when we do our commit, what actually happens inside of the solution. So what I'm going to show you now are a series of phases. These phases, build, acceptance test, regression test, are configured by you, and you can decide what you want to do. So in this case, the first thing we're doing is a quick commit check to make sure that we don't have anything out of line with our commits. Maybe we're looking for those rogue commits, and we want to stop that if they don't go through. This is showing a manual control or manual activity, and then a control that we want to do, so that if we say, yeah, everything is good, it'll just push that on to the next phase, which will be the acceptance test phase. In acceptance test, this is where we want to do our deploy and test. Every time we come in here, we'll do the first activity will be a deploy and test. Then we'll kick off another build of the release branch and deploy and test that. At that point, we're going to check for a control, which is called build of release, to make sure the branch is successful. If it's not successful, if we went through these stages and it didn't go through successfully, we can do some actions on that. Then finally, the last thing we're going to do here is do another check. This can be an automated check or a manual check. In this case, we're checking to make sure that all these tests are successful. So if all the tests were successful, a final just sanity check, then we'll say, yes, go ahead and release that to a regression test, and I can mark that as complete. What this will do, either automated or through a manual series of activities, is make sure that we've done the correct approvals so that we can move that work through to the next stage. So this is showing how we build out the phases, and what these phases are really doing are executing a series of pipelines. We're going to go look at a specific pipeline now. So let's look at this deploy and test, and we'll see what that means when we actually kick that off via a commit from TeamForge Git. So every time my team does a commit, we can again kick off a number of different integrations, and these are the ones that we have integrated in this specific pipeline, and we have dozens and dozens of ones that we can integrate in with. The first thing we're going to do is just confirm some work items. So we'll check in version 1 to make sure that all of our epics and dependencies are completed. I mean, if we want to stop this because we're missing a dependency and it hasn't been done yet, we can actually stop that work right here. So we know the value is not complete because we don't have all of our work items. So we'll stop here before we move forward. If everything looks good and we've confirmed all of our work items and they all look good in version 1, there's no blocking issues out there, then we can go ahead and update version 1. So we're going to, the developer can actually update version 1 right from his Git environment. So by doing this commit, we can then update statuses. We can do other things to version 1 right here from Continuum. This is showing the tight integration that we have between the DevOps side as back over to version 1. So in DevOps, we can do all of these changes, and then this we're going to actually send or update different things like statuses back in version 1. If we're using a communication tool like Slack, we can post messages as well. Again, anything else we want to update in here, we can do that as part of our update v1 steps. Then we'll do our builds. We can do a Jenkins build. We can do our deployments or use Artifactory. We've got a Red Hat solution as well, where we can use that to do our deployments as well. Any of the other tools that you need to do for your builds and your containerization, and then making sure that all of that runs successfully, we can execute and kick those off here as part of a build process. And then finally, we can check code quality. In this case, we're using SonarQube, and we're going out and getting our SonarQube metrics and making sure that everything that we need to from a code quality perspective is there. We can execute additional testing if we want to stop and execute additional testing too. So all of this happens because we did a specific action or a build or a push from our source control system. And then this is just an example of a number of different integrations that we can all run together to make sure that as we look at the specific progression of the work that we want to do, that we're ready to go ahead and move that work on to the next phase. Again, looking at the manifest, you can see exactly which user stories and which individual changes back to our source control system are in there as well. So let's go back to our progression board one more time. We'll look at that work again. We could have actually pushed that, pushed this revision of that work into the next phase if we thought it was ready to go. But from this point forward, we'll actually just leave that for now. Let's take one more look at another revision here and one more audit report. So as I look at this specific one, this code is actually just about ready to go. These changes for this package are just about ready to go into deployment. So we're just waiting here to see, is that revision promotable? And we need to go ahead and promote that forward if we think it's ready to go. In the manifest, again, we can check out all of the individual user stories and all of those changes that we have for this story. So if we look at the changes, that's going to show us the individual file changes that we've done. So we can drill all the way down to the file changes. When we go into the file changes, then we can look at things like environments. We can look at things like source files and understand what those source files are. In this case, we can actually flag specific source files. So this specific musical instruments HTML file looks like it's had defects before on it. So what we do is we flag that as a risky file, and then we can use that in our risk indexes. And we can show that when we make changes to this specific source file, even if it's a user story change, we know that we've had issues before on that. So we can track things like high-risk files, and we can measure that and make sure that when we do make another change to that we can monitor or adjust the controls to say, hey, you've got risky files, you might want to check this out a little bit closer. So that's just a couple of things that we can see from the progressions, the manifests, and the details for that. If we had additional actions, we can put additional actions in there, things like approvals or other things. We can build those right in here as well by adding them directly into our progressions to make sure that whatever process you want to go ahead and map in can be mapped in, so we can go through these phases and get that work delivered out to our end customer.
Mark, we have a question that came in.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So can you schedule or time box any of these deployments ahead of time?
So there is a way to go ahead and use a scheduler. So if you want to put those in, we do have a scheduler. You can say, this is when I want this to go out. Yes, you can go ahead and schedule those out. Anything else, Allie?
Another one just came in. At the program level, how can you measure PI technical debt?
Yeah, good question. Let me show you. Actually, I'll show it here first, and then we will talk about it from the program level. So when we go into our metrics here, this is our flow metric, but I'm going to go over to our risk metric. I'll get back to this flow metric in a second here. So from a technical debt perspective, we can actually measure the things that are maintenance versus the things that are new value. So we can track this because we know the types of work that's coming through. So in this case, we've got 5% of the work here is maintenance or technical debt. 95% of the changes for this specific package are new value. So we know the type of work that's coming over from the program, and if we want to, we can use this to really track what's new value versus maintenance and technical debt. So on the program side, if we're in version 1, we could do a similar thing. We could either filter for, or we could run reports to say, show us stuff, and depending on how you define your tech debt, you could say, show us stuff that's either, you could use defects for that, or you could use a few other ways to track tech debt over there and understand exactly what that is. And we also have tagging, so you could tag work as technical debt, and then you could run a report, or you could filter for tech debt versus non-tech debt as well. Good question.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, so we looked at a couple of metrics here already. Let me just explain this one real quick. This is one of my favorite ones, actually. This shows me, first off, change arrivals. So this is showing me when the changes are actually coming through. And typically, we're going to want a 7-day code freeze. So this says, 6 or 7 days before we go live, we don't want any changes in the system. So this will actually measure and monitor, have we done any changes right before we went live? If we found something wrong, if we had to make some changes, maybe this means that we need to do some additional controls or check something out. In this case, this looks pretty good. We've made no changes in the last 6 days, so I'd be pretty confident about pushing this specific version through. We also mentioned the rogue commits before, so we still know that there are 6 rogue commits out there, so we can go into version 1 now, associate those rogue commits to the right story or the defect. Otherwise, we're not going to push this thing into production. Too many rogue commits is a bad thing. We want to make sure that we don't have rogue commits going into production. Risk averages, we mentioned those risky files before as well, so we can track our risk averages and say, hey, if there's a high risk file here, maybe we want one more review of this. Let's go ahead and add another step into our process to make sure that, because of these 7 high risk files, let's do one more series of tests on this to make sure that things are not going to break when we deploy this into production. And then we looked at this value goals already. So this is showing us from a risk perspective, how much of our work is new, how much of it is maintenance. We can track that as well with our tech debt. In addition to that, we can look at it from a flow perspective. So because we're tracking that work as it's coming in, we know when the clock starts. We can track how long it takes us to get through build, acceptance tests, and so forth. So this is showing the flow of the work and where all of that work is. In addition to that, we have our ability to track efficiency as well. So efficiency, efficiency is hold on. What just happened here? There we go. So efficiency here, sorry about that, is showing us the difference between wait time and touch time. So SAFe calls this touch time, process time. So what this is showing us is how long are we actually processing the work in acceptance test, and then once we're done processing it, how long does it just sit here before we move it to regression testing? So this allows us to track and try to manage some of the bottlenecks that we might be having in the solution, as well as manage the work as we move it through. So this gives us an efficiency quotient, and we can try to improve upon this release over release or build over build, and really try to make that better for our deliveries as we move forward. So flow and risk are two of the metrics that we can use. Another one that I like to look at is our tracking bottlenecks and really identifying where those specific bottlenecks are. Because we know what the work is as it's flowing through the different phases, we can then actually use that to track and measure how efficient we've been in terms of where the slowdowns are in our process. So we can look at things like average duration, percent in phase, as we look at the history of delivering all of that work over the past revisions. Now we know that it's probably, it's performance test, or if we look at a percent in phase, 41% of our time we've been in performance test. So if we can reduce the amount of time it takes us to do performance testing, that means that we can do a better job of delivering faster out to our end customer. Or maybe there's a reason why performance test has to take so long, and if we can reduce that by adding more hardware or doing something else to that, we can actually, again, get that work out to the end customer as quickly as we possibly can. These bottlenecks are extremely important as you're trying to improve your CI and your CD delivery and understand where you are in terms of how long it's taking us to do different levels of work. That also helps us to try to improve our overall cycle time and really drive these numbers down for our end customers. So as we look at how long it's taking us, how long what are the lead times, and how long is it taking us to deliver that out to the end customer, we can track and measure that now and really try to drive this number down as we start to improve our process, start to lean up what we're doing. It really gives us the ability to track and manage all of that work and really understand as we go through this, how can we improve overall and make sure that we're doing a better job at the delivery side of delivering that value.
Mark, in this package detail view, what panel are you working in? How did you get there?
Yeah, so I'm on the DevOps side, and what I did was I opened up from the progression. Let me just show how I got there here. From the progression board, I went into the specific revision here, so 4.8. And so from there, we're looking at the package. So it's the flow package detail page is what it is, and then so it's the package detail from the flow site, and then from there I can go into percent phase here. All right, so in addition to that, and seeing all of that work across all of that, we also have insights that we can use to track this as well. So insights are really going to allow me to really see how well we've been doing overall, or for a specific package, or all of my packages. We can track things like automated versus manual activity goals. If we're using tasks, we can track how long it's been taking us to get these tasks through the system. So we can also look at all of our deliveries as well. So it's looking at all of this work from a pipeline perspective, from a task and activities perspective, as well as our continuous integration goals. And we can use these insights to do a better job of understanding where we're delivering. So just to finish up where we were looking at the delivery side here and some of those key metrics that people would be using to track and manage what a delivery manager or a release manager or a release engineer might be looking at. That was the flow and the risk metrics, the insights, our ability to audit and see all of that detail here and really understand what's going on. Finally, what we do is we bring that information back over to the portfolio as well. So the last part of this is I'm going to show you how this data comes back over to the portfolio, and we're going to look at that data from an Epic view perspective. We're going to be able to see the deliveries that we're doing from the Epic side as well. So when I go back into version 1, we can look at our delivery at a glance board here. And what this is showing me now is my Epic on the left-hand side. So here I am under Program Increment Planning, Delivery at a Glance. And I'm here over on the Epic side now, and we can see all of that work, each of those individual user stories and where they are in DevOps. So sometimes I call these my batches of work. So this is a batch of user stories and defects. The darker shaded ones over here, these are done. So there's nothing left to do on them except to move them into production. So we're ready to go on those. The lighter shaded ones here, those are ones where there's still work to be done. And the ones with the little triangle on them, this is actually showing me that we have a split commit. We have work in 2 different places for this specific user story. So I know that this story is here, and it's also an acceptance test, and we can drill into the details there and see that on that details page once again. This is extremely helpful for me because now I can see exactly where all of my work is, and I can make a call to say, hey, that version in regression test, let's go ahead and ship that out because that's valuable enough. Or no, there's so much work left in acceptance test. Let's make sure that we combine that with regression test, and then we'll ship out that specific version. So I have visibility now into exactly what's going in. We know how much has been delivered to the end customer. So 19% of the work overall has been delivered to the customer. We have 22% of the work done. So we could be delivering more out to the customer if we want to go ahead and get more released out to the end customer as well. So what this is showing is the work that's happening over in DevOps, and we can track all of that work here, as well as how that work is flowing across the different phases as the release side of the house, the delivery side of the house starts to deliver on this value. We know there's a value score and there's value goals and hypotheses on this specific epic as well. So as we start to achieve those, we can actually update those numbers as well. We can automate that through Continuum, and we can have the value scores be updated back in here, or we can manually be tracking that work as well. Finally, we have our code complexity ranking here, so we're able to track code complexity. This is a normalized score that we're bringing over, in this case from Sonar Cube, but we know the complexity of the work that we're doing as well. So we can use this as well to understand why it's taking longer, maybe explain that back to the customer, or we can try to reduce our code complexity so that we don't have such a high score and try to make this a much easier way to deploy that out to the end customer. Just another visual that we can use by bringing quality data back over from the individual work that we're doing on the delivery side. Finally, as I open up this work, we want to see exactly what's being delivered. Again, we can go back into this and make sure that as we look at the progress, we look at what we're delivering on this specific epic, that we're trying to deliver on this business value, and we're delivering this 88 points of business value. Or if we're updating our expected value down here and our actual value, we can come back and make sure that we're delivering on that actual value results. And the main reason we're doing all this is so we can tie that back to our big company goals. We can tie that back to our strategic themes and the completed work that we're actually doing, and see all of that roll up from a individual task and story and file level, all the way back up into our epics, all the way up to our budgets and through to our strategic themes. So that's the end-to-end picture. Yeah, go ahead, Ellie.
We have a question that came in. If you go back one to where you were, there's the PI increment tab. Does this only show on your board if you have Continuum?
No. So PI increment. I just renamed it to be PI increment planning. Sometimes this is called release planning. The standard version 1 Ultimate Edition, you're going to have 4 different sections here. You'll have portfolio, you'll have product, you'll have release, or I just renamed it PI increment, and you'll have team. So those are the 4 things that come with the Ultimate Edition. The only thing that doesn't come with the Ultimate that's going to be in the DevOps side of that is going to be the things that we looked at in terms of the delivery, all of those, the revisions and the packages and the progressions of the work.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Right. So I think, yeah. Go ahead. I think we're ready for questions now. If there's additional questions.
Excellent. So the next question is: do you perform capacity analysis at epic level, or would you do them at the story level?
Yeah, great question. Actually, I had 2 demos yesterday where we went through this discussion. So you can do it in either place. So if we're talking about capacity at a higher level, usually at the program or portfolio level, that's often when we're looking at it from a work perspective. So it's the size of the work. So we would use the epic sizing or the story sizing. When we're down at the team level, oftentimes we want to do capacity from a resource perspective. So we're looking at the hours, the number of hours or people days that we have on that work. So we would do the capacity down there at a people level if we want to go ahead and track that. We can also roll the people capacity up higher if we wanted to. So it really depends upon your process. But we can track capacity either from a work perspective by rolling that up at an epic level from a points perspective, or from an hourly perspective as well. It really just depends upon how you want to track it. We can accommodate both ways and show you capacity either way.
Excellent. We have 2 more questions. Can you please explain where the prioritization data, such as time, criticality, and cost of delay, is coming from? And are they calculated by the system or entered by the users?
Sure. There's 3 value scores that we were just looking at. Those get added up to be cost of delay. That's business value, time criticality, and cost reduction. So those are just 3 numbers that you can put on every epic or feature. You can automate that if you wanted to, if you wanted to write a quick script to say this is the business rules and come up with a scoring model or something like that. Typically, I'll use an Excel spreadsheet for that, and then it will calculate a score for you. We don't auto calculate something because there's so many different business rules that you would use for something like, risk reduction, and what number do we put in there. So it's a manually entered number, but it can be automated through the API or through a simple Excel import if you wanted to go ahead and do that.
Great, thank you, Mark. And the last question that I have is, please explain how you determine if you have excess capacity at one of the teams. Do you forecast workload based on story size or expected sprint?
Yeah, so the capacity number that we looked at earlier was actually looking at it from the stories that we've built into a specific release. So for a time box, so you build in, say for a month, we think we're going to deliver 100 points of work. We'll track that work all the way through, so we can see if we've planned too much into there, or if we actually have too much work, or if we're going to be behind schedule on delivering that work. So we can track the capacity at a project level. When we do our sprint planning or our team planning, we plan the work down there as well, so we know what the team velocity is, and we can actually use that team velocity to see if we're over allocated, if we've gone over our average as well. So we can track capacity by team, looking at the velocity of the teams and how well they're delivering. We can put a capacity goal at the team level as well, and we can also do that at a higher level. So if there's no other questions, I can quickly just jump in and show you that here on the program board. So let me just jump in there real quick and show that here. So if I go back into my scheduling module here, I'll just finish by showing you the example of the 2 different capacity models here. So here I have capacity from a project perspective, and I can also track that capacity down here at an individual team level. So we can see each team and what their capacity can be. This is at the program or the project level. If I go down to the team level and go to my sprint scheduling, I can see the team velocity, and we can track team capacity down here as well. So for each sprint, there's a specific planned and target number and our velocity of what we want to deliver as well. So we can see that here as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mark, so much for the demo. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us. Thank you for your attendance and interest in CollabNet version 1, and specifically our version 1 and Continuum products. One thing I want to mention before we close is that CollabNet version 1 works with companies that are at all stages of implementing your scaling Agile and DevOps initiatives. We also offer coaching services for those who may need additional training to be successful, and we also provide product training for all CollabNet version 1 solutions. If you are interested in learning more, please email info@collab.net, and we'll be more than happy to follow up with you directly. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to all of our attendees, and have a great day.